was affected enough that the leadership made statements to kind of retract what they had said before. And they were saying, they went from being, we're pro-Israel and this is where we stand. Those who are upset with the Biden administration are upset about the killing of women and children.
Time you were here, Annette, it was back on the 20th of October. That was last year. Israel had just declared war on Hamas, and we had 4,000 people dead at the time. And we were actually already talking about the war that had just started. You will remember the time, very early in the war, I categorically said that Biden will lose almost all Muslim support. As of today, that number of the people dead has gone up from 4,000 when we were talking at that time to over 35,000, and we've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of protests across the world. Now, more recently, students have set up camp in college campuses across the U.S. in solidarity with Palestine, and they're demanding a ceasefire now. Now, as we continue this conversation on elections 2024, maybe tell us what you think, what has shifted in the presidential calculus this coming November following this war. From the last time when we spoke, when I said my gut feeling, what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing is that the Muslim community has completely divorced from Joe Biden. Is there anything, like based on what I said at that time or based on what you were seeing that went against your expectation or that you saw that has shifted very differently within the presidential race? Annette.
I will say that this is a very unique time when it comes to this presidential race, because conflict when it comes to Israel and Palestine has been continuing on for a long time. This is something that has been brought to the forefront because of the huge devastation. And of those numbers that you're talking about, we're talking about 70% of individuals who have died being women and children.
Yes.
And because I am a woman and because I have children or have a relationship with the greater Kenyan community children that exist within my world, that is very devastating to me to hear about it in terms of those numbers. So what has happened is that there are ongoing conversations that happen, and sometimes they do not take on the media coverage as much as I personally would like, because I want to know what's going on in the mind of the president and what's going on that side and the executive office when it comes to this. I do know that there have been times when Biden has had to address these concerns and has said, have patience with me. I'm working on it. And my understanding is that behind the scenes, there are efforts that are being made to have conversations when it comes to the diplomatic side. But is that enough? Most people don't want to have quiet conversations behind closed doors and not understand what that is, and then just hope one day that is going to have a certain ramification. And I think we need to be specific about what it is that is wanted by the greater community. Those who are upset with the Biden administration are upset about the killing of women and children. People who are not Hamas. Hamas is an entity, it's an organization, and then there are the people who are living on that land, and there is a distinct difference. Do we want to support an organization that is using terror and hiding behind individuals in order to get their point across? I don't think so. I think most people can say that we do not appreciate the tactics that Hamas used to get attention. However, that is a different conversation from what is happening as retaliation. And in this situation, the retaliation is primarily affecting people who do not identify as Hamas. And we only know that because the numbers that you're saying, we're talking about 35,000 people. Those 35,000 people are not operatives of this organization that was responsible for October 7th. That is very important to note. Unfortunately, there are a lot of emotions involved. I am in a county that has a diversity whereby we do have a Muslim population that is present and very well seen. And we also have a very large Jewish population at the same time. And so this is something that I am glad that conversations were happening between multiple communities prior to this event happening in Baltimore County, which means I have the luxury of having conversations with individuals from the Jewish community and individuals from the Muslim community at the same time. And one thing that I know is universally understood is that we want peace. How we go about that moving forward is what is truly disagreed upon. So we're talking about schools having encampments, right? We're talking about divesting. What is divesting even? And is that even something that is feasible? Because the pushback that these universities are saying is that this is not possible. But what I know from history is that the same thing happened when it came to the South African apartheid. And during that time, there were universities that were investing in companies that were benefiting from the apartheid state in South Africa. And so the protest method that was used is the same, as far as protesting so that they divest. And that divestment actually had an impact on what happened in South Africa when it comes to what money was, supporting the apartheid state. Mm-hmm. Another example would happen to be when we're talking about the formalized group, the KKK formalized group actually was bankrupted. And they were bankrupted not because of student encampments or divesting in that way, but from the monetary ramifications of someone taking them to court and suing and getting damages done. And that is how that particular organization had to be dismantled. Now, the history of what happened after the fact is not that the KKK is gone. It's just that the formal organization no longer exists in the same way that it did when it was first created. And so we're talking about money. We're talking about, boycotting certain companies. So you're saying people are boycotting McDonald's. I know people were boycotting
Coca-Cola.
Starbucks was affected enough that the leadership made statements to kind of retract what they had said before. And they were saying, they went from being, we're pro-Israel and this is where we stand and we're not, open to hearing other sides, to then having an argument of, what we really want is peace. What we really want is, so it shifted the tone. Is that enough for people? That's for people to decide. But what they're really saying is that this boycott has had enough of an economic impact that we're seeing this as executives, and we need to change the tone of what we're saying. I really wonder if we had Elijah Cummings, what that would look like, because he is the master of the good trouble. We're getting in good trouble. And what does that mean? It means that you're standing up for something that whenever there has been a protest, there has been pushback. And whenever there has been a protest, what the protest is about has always been miscommunicated. Like, do people know what's happening beyond, what CNN is saying, beyond what Fox News is saying? Like, who's actually sitting down and understanding what the conversation is about and what is being protested?
Yeah, so this conflict, with the sadness of the death of over 35,000 people, it came with a lot of lessons and a lot of points to learn. And I talk this, from within the community.
Right.
And just trying to also logically understand, what's happening. Does what we're doing make sense? Does it serve our interest to just totally go against Joe Biden? What's the alternative on the other side? And where, I'm a card-carrying Democrat, where I found it so difficult to even go back to the community and try to explain to them that, this and this might, that's at a personal level, mm-hmm. is just based on the fact, first of all, this is the first TikTok live genocide that has been broadcast to the world in mm-hmm. slow motion. Then there's of course the aspect of Hamas attacking and everything, and that's understandable. When you get attacked, you'll want to retaliate. But when we look at the tactics that have been used in the retaliation, whereby Israel wants to use food, starvation as a weapon of war, which is not being reported by Hamas. It's being reported by the people who are trying to provide food, the organizations that are trying to provide food to the Palestinians.
Yeah, this conflict has actually caused the highest deaths in nonprofit organization individuals, volunteers.
Yes.
In any conflict in recent history, which is very disturbing to me because I know people who are part of Doctors Without Borders who have been, whether they are affiliated with the United Nations, who have gone into areas just to provide sometimes medical, sometimes food, and they have had some level of protection, even though they're going into these
and respect,
even though they're going into these dangerous areas. So this is now going to have ramifications. Are we going to have people willing to volunteer to go into these situations if we know that your life is at risk to this extent? And this has implications beyond just Palestine. This is going to be ramifications within the world. We're going to have human resources issues because of this.
So I think, when I try to think, from Biden's point of view, unfortunate for him, he's the one who, was holding the purse and is also holding, the ability of allowing, weapons to go in and come out. So he's the one who's on the driver's seat. And then there's this logic that, and it's understandable, I don't know how Trump would have dealt with this, but I know it would have been worse. But then the problem is right now we have someone on the driver's seat. When you're on the driver's seat and you're driving the car into a ditch, the passengers will be like, this is the driver who deliberately drove us into a ditch when he had the opportunity of steering back the vehicle, but he chose not to do that. And that's how this is being perceived. You're the one who's signing all this money that's still financing these weapons that are killing. It's weird that you're sending money to, you're sending the weapons, and at the same time, you're also sending the food, and these people you're sending the weapons to are the ones who are blocking food from getting to these people. So it's a very weird quagmire that's going on in there. And like I said earlier, I'm a bit, let me not even use the word worried, because at this point, because that's the direction Biden has chosen to take, I think he has to live with the consequences of what might come out. So I think Michigan is a state that will be very difficult for Biden to win. Could he still win the presidency without Michigan? Yes, there's still a path for him. One other state, Minnesota, it's one of those states that's being talked about as likely, but I don't think Minnesota is as likely for Biden to lose like Michigan is. Another state that's not being talked about, but from my own analysis and from knowing, the Muslim population there, is the state of Virginia. So Michigan is number one in as far as percentage of, sometimes people think Michigan has the most Muslims. No, Michigan does not have the most Muslims. New York does. New York and New Jersey. But as a percentage of the overall population, which is the important number to impact an electoral outcome, Michigan is number one as far as Muslims are concerned. Number two is the state of Virginia. So that's a state that that Biden should be concerned about. Plus, when you factor in the RFK factor, so that's one state that's not necessarily being looked at even by most pundits, but I'm personally watching it.